Hey folks, I don't know how you did it, but you made it a week without a video and seeing my great office. It's not a bad office actually. At least the sun's not glaring on me. It's early Tuesday. I had uh, quite the day yesterday with a lot of meetings, and I just didn't get things posted. So please forgive me for that. Um, Next week is spring break. I hope you all are getting some time off. I know a lot of you teach and have other jobs and may not get much of a break, but if you can, take a break and get out and have some fun. Um, Thanks a lot for getting all your materials submitted. I got to tell you, I got a lot of positive feedback on the experiment um, assignment, which I really appreciate. As a person who spent a lot of time studying and writing about assessments, getting that kind of feedback from graduate students is much appreciated. As I told someone, when people really like what is basically an assessment or an assignment, in this case, to know that it's valid and reliable in a general sense, and to know people enjoy doing it, that is a win-win situation. So thanks for the positive feedback on that. And actually for this week, we're going to focus on causal comparative. I know I've kind of jumped around the syllabus a little bit. I'm not trying to throw you any curveballs on deadlines, but I know the topics have been a little off. But this week we're going to focus on causal comparative, which I think is a great design. It's a pretty popular design, even though the name is not used a ton. So I'm asking you to read in your text about that, of course. And I've also developed an activity that's also going to double as your quiz. Um, so it's kind of an all-in-one deal. And it's similar to the experimental design where I'm asking you, I'm giving you a scenario. It's not a likely scenario where the state of Montana is offering you big money to do a study and you're kind of under the gun to develop a design. In case you haven't noticed, I like performance type of assessment. Um, so, in the context is alternative schools. So that I have obviously a personal interest in that. But I think you'll have fun learning about alternative schools, but also thinking about doing causal comparative. This is actually a kind of a dream study that I would like to do at some point. Don't know if I'll ever get to it, but of looking at the outcomes of kids from alternative schools. So, last week with an experimental design, I haven't graded or reviewed those activities from most of you, but kind of a cornerstone of experimental design is random assignment. That's a huge concept, one of the biggest concepts within research, social behavioral research in general, is random assignment. So hopefully in your coolest experiments ever, you're discussing random assignment, which is frankly like a unicorn in education research, because it's really hard to randomly assign kids to interventions or to different classrooms. It's just really hard to do for understandable reasons. I mean, as a parent, would I want my child just randomly assigned to a treatment or control group? Along those lines, what you see a lot in education is called quasi-experimental, where you're looking more at intact groups. Okay, so one teacher just focus on reading. One teacher is using a new curriculum that people want to know is it effective, or is it more effective than what's often called business as usual. So you have two classrooms, one's using the new program and the other one's using the existing program that the school's been using for a couple decades, say. And you design a study using those two groups. That's an example of quasi-experimental, which is not as hard to do within educational context, and is much more prominent. A lot of our evidence base, if you will, is done with quasi-experimental designs. Now, with causal comparative, the name might even be a little misleading, because really the only true way from, the philosophy of science, if you will, to establish causation is through experimental design. And once again, it's hard to do. And with things like I'm proposing here, what are the outcomes of students that attended an alternative school for the last decade in the state of Montana? Could you do an experiment on that? Mm-mm. Could you do a quasi-experiment on that? Mm-mm. But what you could do is to develop a causal comparative design. And that's all I'm going to tell you, because I want you to read the chapter, and I want you to do a one-page description, single space. I didn't put that in the document, but if you did this in double space, you wouldn't be able to tell me very much. So, and I don't count words or anything like that. So I just want a brief proposal of what, how would you do this? How would you do this study? And it's actually quite realistic. I don't think there is an example in the literature. If there is, it's relatively new. But you can look, use your search skills. You might want to get some context of alternative schools, and develop a causal comparative design, and submit that to me. As I mentioned yesterday in my email, submit that to me by the following Monday, because I want you, if you can do it this week, great. But spring break, so I'm not giving you any assignments. So that's that, and I need to make I'm probably going to spend some of my spring break getting caught up on reviewing things and getting grades updated. I think I'm actually pretty up to date on grades, but let's talk about corrective feedback, or closing the feedback loop. That's what I need to do, because when we give, as educators, when we give students assignments, we need to review them and give them feedback, especially if we see the student is not getting the big ideas. So that's what I'm going to focus on in the next week or two. And just to lay out a little bit about what's coming down the road with the course, we're going to do some activities with statistics, some basic activities. I actually am going to do kind of a hot topic kind of thing before the end of the semester on what's called value-added modeling. And I'm not going to tell you a ton about that. You may have heard of it. I may have mentioned it briefly before, but I think it's very important that in the context of an educational research course in 2015, when most of the students are teachers or closely related fields, that we should talk about value-added modeling, because it could frankly have a big impact on all of us in the next decade or so. So I'll do a video, and also we'll do some type of activity with this. So to be clear, this activity and quiz 3, it's all combined in one. Just submit it to me directly by email. There's no group activity. I know that's challenging, not something we're going to do over spring break. So this is your one activity. Please engage the text. Feel free to use external resources as you would like. So thanks a lot. Be in touch with any questions or concerns.